How the cost of living crisis is silently eroding the American middle class for generations. The American middle class represented stability. It was the economic backbone of the country, the group that worked, saved, and believed that steady effort would lead to a secure future. But that foundation is now cracking. The cost of living crisis is not a sudden collapse. It is a slow, grinding pressure that has been building year after year, quietly reducing purchasing power, shrinking financial flexibility, and reshaping everyday life for millions of Americans who once felt economically secure. At the center of the crisis is a widening gap between income and expenses. Wages, even when adjusted upward, have failed to keep pace with the true cost of living. Official inflation numbers capture averages, but the middle class does not live on averages. They live on housing payments, grocery bills, healthcare costs, insurance premiums, transportation, and childcare. Housing is the single largest pressure point. Home prices have surged far faster than household income over the past decade. Mortgage rates rising on top of elevated prices have locked many families out of ownership entirely, while renters face relentless increases that absorb more of each paycheck. For those who already own homes, property taxes, insurance costs, and maintenance expenses continue to rise. The idea that homeownership guarantees affordability is no longer true for many middle-income families. Healthcare is another major force eroding middle-class stability. Even with insurance, deductibles, copays, and uncovered services have risen sharply. Medical expenses now act as a financial landmine. One unexpected diagnosis can undo years of careful budgeting. Unlike higher-income households, the middle class often earns too much to qualify for assistance, but too little to comfortably absorb major medical shocks. This gap leaves families exposed, anxious, and increasingly reliant on debt. Food costs tell a similar story. Groceries have risen steadily, not just in price, but in unpredictability. Items once considered basic necessities now fluctuate weekly. While households adapt by switching brands or cutting back, there is a limit to how much food consumption can be reduced without sacrificing quality of life. Transportation costs further tighten the squeeze. Whether relying on personal vehicles or public transit, Americans face higher fuel prices, more expensive car repairs, rising insurance premiums, and limited alternatives. In many parts of the country, transportation isn't optional. It's required to maintain employment. Childcare and education have become major financial stressors even for households with two incomes. Childcare costs in many areas rival housing payments. College tuition has risen far faster than inflation for decades, shifting the burden onto families through student loan debt that follows graduates for years. The result is a middle class that feels busy and employed, but financially fragile. This fragility shows up in behavior. Savings rates decline. Emergency funds shrink. Households delay major life milestones such as marriage, homeownership, or starting families, not because of personal preference, but economic necessity. The middle class is not disappearing overnight. It is being hollowed out slowly. What makes the situation uniquely dangerous is that it often goes unnoticed until it reaches a breaking point. Families maintain appearances. Bills get paid, barely. Debt fills the gap between income and expenses, masking the underlying problem. But debt is not income. And eventually, the structure bends under its own weight. Why the system is making it worse, and what it means for the future to understand why the middle class is being squeezed so severely, it's necessary to look beyond individual choices and focus on structural forces. This crisis is not simply the result of people spending too much. It is the outcome of an economic system that increasingly favors asset owners, debt expansion, and short-term growth over wage stability and affordability. One of the most powerful drivers is inflation paired with unequal asset inflation. When prices rise broadly, households with significant assets, stocks, real estate, businesses, often see their net worth increase. But middle-class families depend primarily on wages, which adjust slowly and unevenly. This creates a silent transfer of purchasing power. Assets inflate faster than incomes. Those who already own them benefit. Those who don't fall further behind, no matter how hard they work. Meanwhile, debt has become the default survival tool. Credit cards, buy now pay later services, auto loans, and extended mortgages allow families to maintain their standard of living in the short term. But this borrowing erodes future income through interest payments. Debt transforms today's cost of living crisis into tomorrow's long-term instability. Another factor is the increased exposure of households to risk. In previous generations, employers absorbed more uncertainty through pensions, stable benefits, and long-term employment. Today, risk has shifted onto individuals. Healthcare, retirement, education, and housing are increasingly privatized responsibilities. The middle class is expected to manage complex financial systems without the insulation that once existed. Technology has added efficiency, but also volatility. Dynamic pricing, algorithm-driven costs, and rapid market adjustments mean expenses can change faster than household budgets can adapt. What felt affordable one year becomes unsustainable the next. Geography matters more than ever. Middle-class jobs exist, but often in areas where living costs are highest. Meanwhile, lower-cost regions may offer fewer stable employment opportunities. This mismatch traps families between opportunity and affordability. The psychological toll is growing. Financial stress changes how people think, work, and plan. Anxiety replaces optimism. Precaution replaces growth. Families focus on survival rather than advancement. This has broader consequences for society. When the middle class weakens, consumer spending slows. Entrepreneurship declines. Social trust erodes. Political polarization intensifies as economic insecurity fuels frustration. A shrinking middle class is not just a personal problem, it is a systemic risk. Perhaps the most troubling aspect is normalization. When high prices persist long enough, they become accepted as permanent. Expectations adjust downward. People stop expecting progress and redefine success as simply not falling behind. That shift is dangerous. The American economic model was built on upward mobility. When that belief erodes, so does the social contract. But this crisis is not inevitable. Understanding the forces at work is the first step toward reclaiming agency. Middle-class survival increasingly depends on intentional decisions. Managing debt aggressively, prioritizing liquidity, avoiding lifestyle inflation, and protecting income against shocks. Households that adapt strategically can remain resilient, but adaptation should not be confused with acceptance. A functioning economy does not require constant financial strain to operate. It requires balance. Whether that balance is restored will shape not only the future of the middle class, but the future of the country itself. The hidden reasons the middle class is collapsing. The cost of living crisis isn't just about rising prices. It's the result of deeper, structural problems that have been building for decades, and now, the middle class is paying the price. 1. Wage growth has completely stalled for most middle-class Americans. Wages haven't kept up with inflation for almost 20 years. People are working harder, working longer hours, and taking on multiple jobs, yet their purchasing power is shrinking every single year. While the cost of everything rises, food, fuel, healthcare, housing, utilities, salaries stay almost frozen. This creates a gap that the middle class can no longer fill. 2. The housing crisis is draining generations. Homeownership used to be the American dream. Now, it's becoming a luxury. High mortgage rates, record-high home prices, and low inventory have pushed millions out of the market. Even renting is becoming nearly impossible, with rent hikes happening every few months in major cities. Families that once saved money are now spending over 40 to 50% of their income on housing alone, something that was unheard of a generation ago. 3. Debt is eating away what's left of the income. Credit card debt is at the highest level in U.S. history. Student loans are back. Car loans have become massive. Most middle-class families are surviving by using debt as a lifeline, but it's a trap that gets tighter with every month. High interest rates mean Americans are paying more in interest than they are saving. Debt is no longer a tool. It's a burden crushing the middle class. 4. Essentials are becoming luxury items. Groceries, medicine, childcare, insurance, transportation. These are basic needs. Yet their prices have skyrocketed so fast that people feel poorer even though they earn more. Families are now forced to prioritize survival instead of saving or planning for the future. This is the true destruction of the middle class. 5. Wealth is concentrated like never before. The top 1% owns more wealth than the entire middle class combined. This gap isn't shrinking, it's exploding. Corporate profits are breaking records. CEO salaries are at historic highs. Stock buybacks are soaring. Meanwhile, everyday people can't afford a simple emergency expense. Fire the crisis is not coming. It's here the middle class is being squeezed from all directions. Stagnant wages, exploding prices, record debt, housing unaffordability, corporate dominance, and unless something changes soon, America will be split into only two classes, the wealthy and everyone else.
What happens next and why millions are scared as the cost of living crisis intensifies? The middle class isn't just shrinking. It's on the verge of collapse. And the consequences are already beginning to show. 1. Families are being forced into impossible choices for millions of Americans. Life has become a series of painful decisions: pay rent or buy groceries, fix the car or pay the medical bill, work overtime or spend time with the kids. These choices are no longer rare, they are normal. And nothing destroys the middle class faster than forcing people to sacrifice their basic needs just to survive. 2. The dream of financial security is disappearing. There was a time when one job could support a family, a home was affordable, retirement was realistic. Savings were possible. That era is gone. Today, the average middle-class American is one unexpected bill away from financial trouble. A medical emergency, a car accident, or even a broken appliance can start a financial spiral that many never recover from. 3. Mental stress is becoming a silent epidemic. Money problems are now one of the biggest sources of stress in the United States. People feel overwhelmed, anxious, and hopeless, not because they're irresponsible, but because the system is failing them. Parents feel guilty, young people feel defeated. Older workers fear they will never retire. This emotional breakdown is one of the least discussed but most dangerous parts of the crisis. 4. Young Americans see no future in the middle class. Gen Z and millennials are questioning everything. Will I ever own a home? Will I ever be debt-free? Is the American dream even real anymore? Many are choosing not to have children, not to settle down, and not to plan long-term because everything feels uncertain and unaffordable. A society without hope is a society in danger. 5. The middle-class collapse will reshape America. If this continues, the US will shift into a two-class system. Class 1, the wealthy, owning everything. Class 2, everyone else. Fighting to survive, this isn't speculation. The signs are already here. Record homelessness, skyrocketing consumer debt, declining savings, wages falling behind inflation, housing becoming unattainable, corporations dominating more than ever. The middle class was once the backbone of America. Now it's being crushed under the weight of an economic system that no longer works for ordinary people.